Happy Monday, my friends. Welcome to the Liz Wheeler Show. Well, here we go again. Trump is under political attack once again by deep staters in the United States government. This time, the Manhattan District Attorney. Allegedly, reportedly, Trump claims that Alvin Bragg is going to indict him as soon as Tuesday of this week. Trump announced this on his social media platform, Truth Social. I want to read to you exactly what he said. This is what Trump said. He said, "Our nation is now third world and dying. The American dream is dead. The radical left anarchists have stolen our presidential election and with it the heart of our country. American patriots are being arrested and held in captivity like animals, while criminals and leftist thugs are allowed to roam the streets, killing and burning with no retribution. Millions are flooding through our open borders, many from prison and mental institutions. Crime and inflation are destroying our very way of life. Now, illegal leaks from a corrupt and highly political Manhattan District Attorney's office, which has allowed new records to be set in violent crime and whose leader is funded by George Soros, indicate that with no crime being able to be proven and based on an old and fully debunked by numerous other prosecutors fairy tale, the far and away leading Republican candidate and former president of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest," Donald Trump said, "take our nation back." This is pretty big news. If the Manhattan District Attorney is truly preparing to indict President Trump, the former president of the United States, on something as piddly as the Stormy Daniels stuff, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that this is a political witch hunt. This is outrageous. The words to describe this, you could say it's egregious. This has third world vibes. It gives me a chill up my spine. But here's the thing, my friends. First, the deep state targeted Trump with Russiagate. That didn't work. They spent years on it. They destroyed his political capital when he was president, but they didn't ultimately destroy him. So then they hit him with the Ukraine impeachment hoax. It wasn't real. It was a disgruntled staffer who had access to the readouts of President Trump's classified phone calls with leaders of other nations. And it was a political disagreement that was packaged as being something illegal, and it wasn't. A lot of Democrats fell for it. Some Republicans fell for it, but ultimately it didn't destroy Trump. So then we had the classified documents scandal, the Mar-a-Lago raid by the FBI that turned out to be a disagreement between Trump and the National Archives on who exactly owned the letter that Kim Jong-un wrote to Trump when he was president. Does that belong to the federal government or does that belong to Trump personally? It was bad. It was egregious. It was political targeting for sure, but it failed to destroy Trump. So now here we go again. Round 4. This is the next level political targeting. The Manhattan District Attorney is trying to indict Trump on a felony, which is laughable on 2 levels. It's laughable because the Manhattan District Attorney hates felonies. He doesn't prosecute felonies. He actually downgrades over half of felony offenses to misdemeanors before he prosecutes them in New York City. And what Trump did was absolutely 100% unequivocally not a felony. You might notice that some people commenting on this news are getting really agitated, like Trump did not commit a felony. I don't even feel that way because Trump so obviously didn't commit a felony. It barely needs to be discussed. We will debunk exactly why it's not a felony and why the charge is bogus, but that's not even the point of what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is why the left is doing this, what the left is hoping from us as a reaction, and what they have planned, what they're going to do to us if we react in the way they want us to react. And that is the most important part of this show. So let's get to it. All right, guys, I want to talk to you about Genucel. So news, like the news we're talking about today, can be a lot. It can be heavy. It can weigh on your shoulders. It can make us feel like we've aged 10 years because we've been through this once, twice, 3 times already. This is the 4th time Trump is being targeted. I'm immersed in news like this all day, every day, and I know I need help to make sure that this stress, this weight of the world doesn't show up on my face. That is why I love Genucel. Do you know how many skincare products I've tried? Do you know how many don't work? Do you know how exciting it is when it finally feels like you found the secret to great skincare? I am not the only one who feels this way about Genucel. Let me read you a note sent to me from a woman named Mary who lives in North Carolina. Mary writes, my husband and I both noticed that our skin is softer and smoother after having used the Genucel products faithfully for a few weeks. Our skin looks brighter, our wrinkles look softer and less noticeable, and the bags under my eyes are less visible. I'm so happy. My friends, Genucel products target all of your problem areas. That's dark spots, skin redness, bags under the eyes, even a sagging jawline. Genucel works for men and for women of all skin types, and right now, Genucel's most popular package includes their new probiotic extract moisturizer for visibly healthier, more youthful-looking skin. Absolutely free with every most popular package order. Just go to genucel.com/Liz for surprise saving at checkout. And for a limited time, any subscription order includes a free beauty box plus free shipping. That's genucel.com/Liz, genucel.com/Liz. So if President Trump is indicted like he claims that he will be, and all signs seem to be pointing in that direction, I know that some people are saying, oh, Trump made that claim and now he's walking it back. I don't think he's walking it back. It doesn't seem like he's walking it back. I know he got a little bit more specific about what he meant or where he'd gotten that information, but it doesn't seem like he's walking back that claim. Some people, both politicians and pundits and Trump haters or Trump lovers don't want to take him at face value or don't want to listen to him. They want to try to make everything political. It doesn't seem like he's walking it back. He said his attorney was not notified, or his attorney says that Trump was not notified, which typically in a quote-unquote professional crime, a white-collar crime, an attorney for a defendant is notified before the arrest happens because it's assumed that that individual will not be on the lam, that they won't be absconding from justice, that they won't run away, that they're not a flight risk. So that has not happened. That notification hasn't happened. However, the reason that Trump tweeted about this is because NBC published an article with these illegal leaks that he was talking about. Assumedly, someone at the Manhattan District Attorney's office, or perhaps someone in the know at the Department of Justice, we'll talk about that in a little while, leaked to the mainstream media, leaked to NBC News that the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, was preparing. He was coordinating with different law enforcement. This includes the FBI. This includes the Secret Service, different law enforcement apparatuses, because he was preparing for the eventuality of a Trump indictment. How does that even work? When you have the President of the United States, in order to avoid a showdown, say for example, that President Trump is out in Mar-a-Lago, his residence in Florida. He's protected by Secret Service. So what happens when a law enforcement official from Manhattan, a law enforcement official from the FBI, comes to Mar-a-Lago and tries to arrest him? Does the Secret Service allow that to happen, or does the Secret Service protect Trump because that's what their role is? Well, that's what this Manhattan District Attorney's office is doing with this interagency coordination, trying to coordinate the logistics of what would happen if President Trump were in fact indicted. So this is what was leaked to NBC News. I don't see how a lack of notification to Trump's attorney means that Trump is walking this back. He's just providing additional details, but it seems like all signs are pointing in that direction. If the Manhattan District Attorney is coordinating with different law enforcement apparatuses, why would he do that if he weren't planning on indicting Trump? He's of course planning on indicting Trump. This was always the plan. It was just a matter of which allegation they thought that they could get away with, whether this was a federal charge of obstructing an official proceeding, which is what they tried to get him on after January 6th, whether it was inciting an insurrection, which they're still trying to hit him with both of those charges. Just wait for this special counsel that was appointed by Merrick Garland to bring those charges. Those are still coming. Every time there's been something, and that's what they were trying to do with the impeachment with Ukraine and Zelensky before Zelensky became a hero of the left. He was a villain of the left. Ironic. This is what they were trying to do with Russiagate. They've always been trying to hit him with charges. They've always wanted to indict him. They've just been outmaneuvered by us, but barely. They've just missed every time that they've tried. So they've always wanted to indict Trump. This was never a norm that they were worried about violating. We've always had an extremely high bar for criminalizing a former president, even if the former president did something wrong, because we want to avoid even the perception, even the appearance of political targeting, because when a president or an administration targets a previous president or a previous administration, it looks like third world banana republic political targeting, where as soon as you're an outgoing president, you're jailed. It's almost like a coup versus a peaceful transfer of power. Because it's so important that we have a peaceful transfer of power, the bar for charging a former president, even if it's a little nitty-gritty crime, a wrongdoing, whatever it might be, has always been, it must be really serious and really egregious for that to happen. Even Nixon was pardoned. So this is something that the left doesn't care about. They're not interested in the norm here. They're not interested in the importance of a peaceful transfer of power. They want to indict Trump. I've been saying this for a year now. They always planned to indict Trump after the November elections. It was going to happen after the midterms. They were going to indict him because they cannot bear the fact that he will be the 2024 presidential nominee. And he is a very useful stooge for them, since they hate him so much and they want him out of the way anyway, a very useful medium to get to us. Because truthfully, this is not only about Trump. This is about every single one of us who rejects the neo-Marxist radical leftist ideology. Whether we voted for Trump in 2016, whether we voted him in 2020, whether we don't like Biden, whether we didn't like Hillary Clinton, whether we don't like AOC, whether we rejected the Green New Deal and Medicare for all, whether we refuse to use transgender neo-pronouns, whether we feel that something shady happened in November of 2020, whether we reject the COVID lockdowns and vaccines and mask mandates, whatever it may be, they hate us. They want to get us, and they're using Trump to do it. If the Manhattan District Attorney indicts former President Donald Trump, this will spawn another January 6th. And that is exactly what the left intends for it to do. Let's talk first, before we get to that part, let's talk first about what these charges are, because they're going to be very misrepresented in this narrative when the left is talking about how Trump abused campaign finance laws and how there was financial malfeasance and how his former attorney was already serving prison time for this. I want to just clear this up so that we're all we're all very clear-minded and clear-eyed about what this actually is. So Stormy Daniels, you remember her, this porn star who claimed that she had an affair with Trump. Maybe this is true. I have no idea. President Trump's former personal life is obviously quite promiscuous. Not something that I endorse, but clearly didn't impact his ability to govern well his first 3 years of his presidency. So President Trump paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 as part of an NDA agreement, a non-disclosure agreement. These are very standard agreements in many, many industries. And a non-disclosure agreement is exactly what it sounds like. You sign a document saying, I will not talk about XYZ. Oftentimes these happen when you're exiting employment, especially employment in a political industry or a media industry in Hollywood. If you work for someone who's in the public eye or famous, you sign a document saying, I will not give away any details. I will not talk about any interactions. I will simply be silent about everything that went on. And the price for that is you get paid for it. You get that that's essentially a service, a good and service that you're rendering to this person. And so you get paid for it. So Stormy Daniels signed a document saying, I won't talk about the affair that I claim that I had with Trump. And in exchange, President Trump paid her $130,000 for this agreement. Now, the way that this was paid is the problem, because you might be thinking, well, NDAs are extremely common, which they are. NDAs are not problematic under the law, especially in New York State where this happened. They're entirely legal. They happen all the time in New York State, both for personal reasons like President Trump's, and professional reasons, like if you work at almost any kind of business, you sign an NDA on your way out the door, or you sign an NDA when you begin your work there. They're entirely legal, extremely common. So what's the problem here? Well, the problem is that when President Trump was running for president, he did not pay Stormy Daniels directly. He used his lawyer, Michael Cohen, the fixer guy, the shady guy who turned on Trump, who's in prison. That guy. Michael Cohen paid Stormy Daniels, and President Trump paid Michael Cohen back in installments that were a little shady on the accounting side. So what I mean by that is the payments were listed by the Trump organization. So the payments that went to Cohen, the Trump organization listed as a legal expense. And they said that they had Michael Cohen on a retainer, which is a fee that you pay someone to always be on hand when you need them. Apparently, Cohen wasn't on a retainer, and the reimbursements weren't related to an actual legal service rendered by Michael Cohen. It was just Trump's way of paying Michael Cohen back for paying Stormy Daniels for this NDA. So The misdemeanor, and this is a key word here, the misdemeanor that would be involved in what I just described would just be falsifying business records. It's kind of a simple thing. It's not good. I'm not endorsing it. You shouldn't do that. But to indict a former president over $130,000 that he actually paid back just because he miscategorized it on a business record, like, there's thin ice. There's like a very thin case, and then like 1,000 miles away from that, 1,000 miles thinner is this. This is the most, I mean, it's almost laughable. It's literally almost laughable. It is so ridiculous, so absurd. This prosecutor isn't intending to charge Trump with a misdemeanor of falsifying business records. He's intending to charge Trump with a felony, and he wants to elevate this really stupid, piddly misdemeanor to a felony because prosecutors are allowed to do that in this type of case if they can prove that Trump's intent, his intent to defraud, meaning if he falsified a business record, that his intent to defraud included an additional intent to conceal or commit another crime. Okay, so it's like stacking crimes. The secondary crime that these prosecutors are planning to hinge this charge on, they're going to elevate the misdemeanor to a felony, hinging on the fact that they think that they can prove that Trump had the intent to conceal or commit another crime. And this alleged other crime would be campaign finance violations. That this hush money, if you will, that he paid to Stormy Daniels, that's sort of the negative way of talking about an NDA. It's the same thing though. Benefited his presidential campaign and therefore was an abuse of campaign finance law. It was a violation of campaign finance law because it wasn't reported as part of his campaign. Now, this I find patently absurd for multiple reasons. The first of which is this is not something that has to do with his campaign only. This is something that is entirely both plausible and very likely that a man in Trump's position who has behaved as Trump has would do to protect, well, he's married. Maybe he didn't want his wife to know. Maybe he didn't want this woman blabbing to the press because Trump is a public figure and he has a reputation to uphold. This is something that is not something that Trump did just because he was running for president. This is something that is very, very likely that he would have done anyway, that perhaps he had done in the past, that he would do in the future. I'm not sure how any prosecutor could think that they would be able to definitively prove that the only reason Trump did this was to benefit his presidential campaign. There's simply no way to prove that definitively, which is why this is so bananas absurd. The other reason that this is bananas absurd is actually a legal analysis of federal campaign finance law. This was something Stephen Miller brought up on Twitter, and I want to read that in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about American Hartford Gold. My friends, is it only me or does the future feel more insecure and uncertain every moment that Biden continues to be president? At every turn, we are getting less for more, while record high inflation, soaring interest rates, and the looming recession are threatening businesses, jobs, and retirement funds. Now we have this banking crisis as well. Even Fed Chair Powell warned us that we should probably brace for more pain. Well, if you don't want to brace for more pain, if you want to avoid that, there is a way to secure your hard-earned nest egg, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. You can do what I did. You can call the only precious metals dealer I trust, American Hartford Gold. They make it simple and easy to protect your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one short phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is the highest rated firm in the country with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. If you call them right now, they will give you up to $1,500 of free silver on your first order. So don't wait. Call them right now. Call 866-781-7499. That's 866-781-7499 or text Liz to 65532. Again, that's 866-781-7499 or text Liz to 65532. Okay, so on its face, a piddly misdemeanor that probably wouldn't even be charged. Like what kind of prosecutor would waste their time indicting someone for a misdemeanor like this? It's the stupidest thing. Like personally shady, sure, don't cheat on your wife. That should be obvious. But something that should require a federal prosecutor to be involved in, I can think of literally a million things that should take priority over this. The fact that we haven't even prosecuted the rioters that destroyed our cities during the Black Lives Matter riots of 2020, the fact that Antifa actually declared an autonomous zone, both in Atlanta, Georgia, and Portland, Oregon, and they were barely charged for it. The fact that we have illegal aliens, and not just individual illegal aliens, but drug cartels and human traffickers just pouring across our border. The fact that we have gun crime in Chicago that rivals a third world country in war with the fatalities. And this is what the prosecutor chooses to focus on. Okay, so what might be the motivation here? The motivation is obviously political. The charge is absurd on its face. And as Stephen Miller points out on Twitter, I want to bring this up because I want to read this exactly. Stephen Miller says, I'm going to quote this: "The idea that a routine private settlement unconnected to any campaign activity is a criminal offense because the settlement should have been paid with official campaign funds is the most preposterous, ludicrous, idiotic, indefensible, fraudulent, quote-unquote, legal theory conceivable. Under this, quote-unquote, theory, candidates must use federal campaign funds for private, personal, or corporate matters, an exact inversion of federal law. Indeed, the Department of Justice prosecutes those who use campaign funds for expressly non-campaign purposes. Of course, the theory is all bogus pretest. No serious human believes that the Manhattan DA's office believes any of this. They understand this is a purely partisan exercise in vengefully prosecuting a political enemy precisely as it is done in repressive third world nations, despotic regimes, and Marxist authoritarian states." That's interesting. That point is a point that I have not heard many people make. A lot of people are in agreement that this is political witch hunt. I mean, really, no one disagrees with that, even if they pretend to. But it would have actually been a crime had Trump used campaign funds for this personal expense. And what the left is trying to do is they're trying to put him in a crime if you do, crime if you don't situation. Crime if you do it this way, crime if you don't situation. They just want it to be a lose-lose for President Trump. But he would have been violating federal law had he used campaign funds for something that was a personal or corporate expense. It wouldn't have been a campaign-justified expense. This is what the left wants. They want a perp walk. They want President Trump to be hauled out in handcuffs. They wanted that when it came to the classified document scandal, the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, the picture that they released of the classified folders that they had laid out on the carpet of the 45 office at Mar-a-Lago. Who does that unless it's a PR stunt? They want a perp walk. They want Trump in handcuffs. They want to humiliate him. They want to enrage us. Now, I feel rage. You probably feel rage. We all do, because this is injustice. This is so unjust. It's hard to believe that it's happening in our country. This makes us feel, and rightfully so, that we are on the brink of losing our republic. When those who hold the power in our federal government weaponize that power to the extent that they will actually seek to imprison and criminalize their political enemies, how does that make us any different than what happens in Cuba, or what happens in Iran, or what happens in Putin's Russia, or what happens in North Korea, or what happens in Venezuela? How is it materially different? Maybe those countries are further along the tyrannical authoritarian spectrum, but it seems like we're following docilely behind. The left wants to put Trump in handcuffs because they want us to rage, because this is the January 6th playbook. We've been very fortunate in the last couple of weeks to see the videos that were taken at the Capitol on January 6th that Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy released to Tucker Carlson, who aired bits and pieces of them in a couple of days on his show, that destroyed the narratives that the left has been propagating about January 6th, about the QAnon shaman, about Ray Epps, about all different kinds of things that the left had accused us, or the people who were there, of doing. It wasn't an insurrection. It wasn't violent. It was certainly staged by the feds who were provoking it. we knew all of that. It was great to see the validation, the exoneration. It makes it harder for the left to push back on it. But like it or not, even if 2 years later we are relentlessly and tirelessly unpacking what happened on January 6th, we are being committed detectives. We were not going to let this crime go unpunished. It kind of worked. It kind of worked. There are at least 36 American citizens who have been detained in solitary confinement in the DC Gulag since January 6th of 2021, and that is pre-trial detainment. Their fundamental constitutionally protected rights have been denied based on bogus, phony, or completely trumped up charges, like maybe they committed some vandalism, which is wrong, but insurrection, seditious conspiracy, treason? I don't think so. They weren't even armed. January 6th, to a certain extent, fulfilled exactly what the left wanted it to fulfill. They wanted to use it as a way of portraying everybody who supported President Trump and everybody who had questions about what happened in the November 2020 presidential election as terrorists, as insurrectionists. And they used that situation, fomented by the feds. It wasn't organic, it wasn't real, to demonize all of us. And the purpose of demonizing all of us isn't just a PR trick. It wasn't just to win an election. They used that vilification of us based on our politics as the pretext to violate our rights. It was a test balloon to see if the American people would push back. And a couple people did, a few people like Julie Kelly. But by and large, the American people either bought the leftist narrative, including many Republicans, bought the leftist narrative on January 6th, or it was such a convoluted, complicated scheme by the left, staged by the feds, that the American people simply lost interest. When a crime has been committed and those who perpetrate it are not held accountable, it will happen again. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Because when a criminal gets away with a crime, that criminal is emboldened. They crave it. They will do it again, and they are doing it again. This is what we face with the Manhattan District Attorney and this impending reported indictment of President Trump. They want us to be enraged because they know we will be righteously angry because it is such a miscarriage of justice. There are hardly words to express the extent of it. And they want us to protest because that is a valid recourse for us to, as our founding documents say, petition the government for a redress of grievances, our right to assembly, our right to free speech. When we feel like we're not sure if our votes are counted, when we are not sure if our public officials listen to us, we gather in masses in the street and we force them to listen to us because it's hard to ignore a crowd. It's easy sometimes to ignore one voice or two voices, individuals standing here and there, but when we stand arm to arm and get together, it's hard for our collective voices to be ignored. And so the left hijacked that. They said, okay, well, we're going to take these peaceful protesters because that's what Republicans are. We're not Antifa. We're not Black Lives Matter. They took peaceful protesters and they faked violence. They fomented violence. And in a group of millions of people, regardless of the core ideology, the shared ideology of these millions of people, there are going to be a few crazies. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, doesn't matter what ideology, what gathering. If you have a group of millions of people, you are going to have some nutty people. And so the feds infiltrate, they seek out these nutty ones, and they trick these nutty people into being agitators into being more violent than they would be without being provoked by the feds. And then they associate everybody, even the peaceful people, with the nutty people, label them all as terrorists and insurrectionists, and use it as a way to violate our rights. That is the January 6th playbook, and that is what the left wants from this. Sure, it's great for them if they get to actually indict Trump, if they get to humiliate him, if they get a perp walk, if they get to feel all hoity-toity, high and mighty. It'd be even greater for them, they think, if President Trump didn't run in 2024. But they actually know that he will. That's part of their plan, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about Patriot Software. Patriot Software creates accounting and payroll software that radically simplifies the day-to-day complexities that American businesses and their accountants face. Patriot's powerful accounting and payroll software is fast, it's simple, and it's affordable, and it helps you keep your most scarce resources, your time and your money. Patriot understands American businesses because of its own humble beginnings in a cold, wet basement of a factory. Patriot Software is obsessed with seeing your business succeed because when your business succeeds, families are blessed, communities thrive, and our country gets stronger. Patriot Software was voted #1 for ease of use, for customer support, for features, and for value for the money by its own users, who oftentimes are the harshest critics. So high praise from users is super high praise. Highly recommend you go to patriotsoftware.com and try the accounting and payroll software for free for 60 days if you use my promo code Liz, and you can see for yourself why tens of thousands of business owners and their accountants trust Patriot Software. Just go to patriotsoftware.com, use my promo code Liz, and you can try their accounting and payroll software for free for 60 days. That's patriotsoftware.com, promo code Liz. So this is the January 6th playbook. The purpose is twofold. They think they're gonna stop Trump from running in 2024, which they won't. And they think they're gonna scare everyone who is a good person from being involved in politics, because who would put themselves and their family in line for this persecution? It's not even prosecution, because it's not justice. It's persecution based on his political views that oppose theirs. They are trying to January 6th us into tyranny. This is the January 6th playbook. They're trying to provoke protests by first abusing power. They use their abuse of power to provoke righteous protests. Then they select the few people who misbehave. They charge those few people like terrorists, even if they're just silly, malcontent agitators. They label all of us associated with the protest against the miscarriage of justice as insurrectionists, and then they violate our rights and subjugate us, all based on our political views, because we voted for Trump, because we support the rule of law, because we understand the threat that they pose in the deep state. It's very eerie, these third world vibes. And the person behind this, let's talk about the person behind this. This is Alvin Bragg right here. You can see him on the screen. Alvin Bragg is the prosecutor. He is the Manhattan district attorney. This guy is such a nutcase. This guy, look at his face. This guy is such a dope. This guy is such a committed political activist who is using his position to actually the opposite of his oath of office. He is acting like a banana republic. He's acting like a despot. He's weaponizing the power of the federal government against a man simply because he doesn't like the man's politics. And the reason that this is 100% clear is because elevating this piddly misdemeanor, which wouldn't be prosecuted anywhere else for any other reason, it's not a high priority, it's ridiculous, it's silly, it's absurd, it's a nothing burger. This prosecutor refuses to prosecute even violent felonies in Manhattan. In 2022, Alvin Bragg reduced 52% of felony charges to misdemeanors. And yet, now when it's Trump, he's elevating this silly misdemeanor to a felony. George Soros gave $1 million to Alvin Bragg for his reelection bid. $1 million. George Soros himself has admitted that this progressive prosecutor project that he's involved in, the intention of that is to prosecute felonies less. The intention of that is to send fewer people to prison because he doesn't believe in our criminal justice system, in our law enforcement system, doesn't believe in prisons, doesn't believe in police. This is the Black Lives Matter, Antifa, neo-Marxist, open society George Soros agenda. George Soros himself has admitted Alvin Bragg is on this list. There's a Wall Street Journal article that actually quotes George Soros talking about which prosecutors he's funded because he wants them to change the way that they prosecute crime. And by change the way they prosecute crime, I mean not prosecute crimes. Alvin Bragg is on that list. So funny then that all of a sudden this guy who has refused to prosecute violent crimes, who has taken over half of felonies and reduced them to misdemeanors, is suddenly taking this little silly nothing of a misdemeanor that would never even be a real misdemeanor because no one cares, and elevating it to a felony, especially when it's the former president of the United States, which, like it or not, the precedent of our country, the history of our country, is the bar for charging former presidents for wrongdoing is actually higher than the bar for charging everyday Americans, because the peaceful transfer of power and the perception of political targeting is so important to the longevity of our republic that we would rather let go small offenses. We'd rather just let them slide by, wrong as they may be, than damage that perception of peaceful transfer of power and create instead a perception of political targeting. This guy, John Cardillo tweeted a couple days ago that his New York Police Department sources said that Alvin Bragg himself was too stupid to concoct a scheme like this, and that the responsibility for this lies with his deputy, with Bragg's deputy, Meg Reese. That will be interesting to watch that unfold. There's been no updated reporting past that initial report from John Cardillo. We will have to see. Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House, let me bring up his statement. This is a pretty good point. He was talking about, it's kind of the same point that John Cardillo is making when John is saying, well, maybe Alvin Bragg isn't the one behind this. Maybe he's just the tool being used. Since he's a tool being used by George Soros, maybe he's being used by others. Kevin McCarthy says, here we go again, an outrageous abuse of power by a radical DA who lets violent criminals walk as he pursues political vengeance against President Trump. I'm directing relevant committees, Speaker McCarthy says, to immediately investigate if federal funds are being used to subvert our democracy by interfering in elections with politically motivated prosecutions. That is a good move by Speaker McCarthy. That is the proper use of the oversight authority of the United States Congress, because, of course, Merrick Garland is aware of this. Of course, the Department of Justice knows about this. Of course, the deep staters in the Biden administration are involved in this. Of course, Alvin Bragg, he might be individually a bitter partisan himself. He might be completely bought off by George Soros. He might be controlled by his deputy. All of those things could very easily be true. But there is no way that this is an independent operation. There is no way that this guy looked at this case, which federal prosecutors, by the way, have declined to pursue in the past. There's no way he looked at this and thought, oh my goodness, this is a must prosecute. This is a case that I must try. Not a chance in this world did he come to that conclusion independently. Someone or someone's are directing him. And if Kevin McCarthy can follow the money trail back to the federal government to see if there is federal money being spent on this, then that will tell us a lot more about who's involved in this than simply blaming Alvin Bragg himself, who is certainly not an isolated character. Here's the thing, though. Here's the political aspect of it. I think that this is really important because Elon Musk and others have said, well, this pretty much guarantees if the Manhattan DA does in fact indict Trump, this guarantees that President Trump will win the election in 2024. I don't think that's true. I think the left is counting on a different strategy. And I think this is how the left is looking at it. The left believes that indicting President Trump will guarantee that Trump wins the Republican nomination in 2024. And I think that's probably true. If Trump is indicted, this will foment so much righteous anger within us because of this miscarriage of justice that it will cause people to support Trump. People who might have previously or up until now been thinking, well, do I want Trump as my candidate? Do I want DeSantis? Do I want someone else? This will cause people support to coalesce around Trump. I think that that's an accurate prediction or assumption that the left is operating under. This is what they want. The left wants President Trump to be the Republican nominee for president in 2024 because they have done two things. They've successfully defeated him once in 2020 by hook or by crook, or by hook and by crook. They've successfully defeated him, and they have vilified him in the eyes of the American people. They've vilified him in the eyes of independents. Unfairly, sure, but successfully. The left has vilified President Trump in the eyes of the American people. And so they think, okay, well, liberal voters or maybe even independent voters, are any independent voters, liberal voters, going to look at what's unfolding now and say, well, oh my goodness, the bitterly partisan Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who I've never heard of until this moment, is unfairly targeting President Trump, abusing his power. And by gosh and by golly, that means that I'm going to vote for this orange Cheeto Nazi, as I've called him, and I've hated him for the last 8 years, but now I'm going to cast my vote for him. Like, no, obviously not. What this will do is this will cause Republican support for President Trump, but it will do nothing to change the opinions of the left, who has decided that Trump is worse than the devil. So the strategic move here by the left is they hope that this will cause President Trump to be the nominee for the Republican Party in 2024. And they think if Trump is the nominee, that he will not win. Even if it's Biden, that he will not win the general election. This is their cynical move. This is their plan. This is why they waited until now to do this. This is why they didn't do it before the midterms. They waited because this will almost guarantee that President Trump is, in fact, the nominee. And people will gladly support him. Republicans will happily support him because this is so unjust, because this is so unfair. The other thing, the Manhattan District Attorney released a statement in the wake of this. This is what he said. Alvin Bragg said, I'm sure you have seen, he didn't release a statement. Let me rephrase that. He sent out an email to his staff. Politico got a hold of this email, and this is what the Dear Colleagues email said. He said, I'm sure you've seen the ongoing press attention and public comments surrounding an ongoing investigation by this office. Please know that your safety is our top priority. We have full confidence in our outstanding security staff and investigators, and we'll continue to coordinate with all of them. We do not tolerate attempts to intimidate our office or threaten the rule of law in New York. Our law enforcement partners will ensure that any specific or credible threats against the office will be fully investigated, et cetera, et cetera. And when I read this, I thought, okay, well, there you go. That shows you exactly what Alvin Bragg's ideology is surrounding this. He said, we do not tolerate attempts to intimidate our office or threaten the rule of law. So the idea of protests that President Trump called for when he said protests, take back our country, the idea of protests are what Alvin Bragg considers to be a intimidation or a threat to the rule of law, which again shows you that the purpose, the reason that the left wants to indict, the reason that the Manhattan District Attorney is potentially going to indict President Trump is because they know it will spawn another January 6th, and that's exactly what they want to happen. They want to label you as an insurrectionist. They want to label you as a terrorist because there's no easier pretext to violate someone's rights than if that person is a terrorist. They want to label you as a terrorist because of your political views, and they're going to violate Trump's rights because they also love to humiliate him in the process. But the real target, the real goal is to suppress and silence and cancel and oppress half of the country who rejects the neo-Marxist ideology of the radical left and the Democratic Party. Don't fall for it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and ring the bell to make sure you never miss a video.